Hello, everyone, and welcome to day one of the Virtual Island Summit 2023. I hope all of you can hear me properly. Thank you so much for joining this session. My name is Maria. I am the social media manager at Island Innovation, and I come from the Azores, a beautiful archipelago located in Portugal. I am very happy to be co-presenting this session, our third today, future skills, preparing young people for work in an island context. The session is sponsored by the Edge Foundation. Thank you so much to the Edge Foundation for supporting us in our mission. And before we begin, you already know where I come from, but I don't know where you come from. So you should see a poll coming up on your screen right now. Please take a few moments to let us know where you are connecting from and the sector and industry that you belong to. While you reply, we also invite you to use the chat function to introduce yourself, let us know where you're coming from, and make any comments as we go. Please make sure that you use also the Q&A function that is next to the chat one. And we will do our best to make sure that we can address all of those, as many as possible at least. Do we have any results on the poll? Here we go. I see many of you are joining from the Caribbean, Europe, North America. Okay, always a very big audience from the Caribbean islands. And the sectors that most of you belong to, we have a lot of, at least almost 30% of you coming from the private sector. And then we have NGOs, 18% of you coming from academia. Well, I hope you all feel very welcome. Please keep the comments going on in the chat. And without any further ado, I gladly introduce you to our session moderator for today, Edge Foundation's Executive Director, Ollie Newton. Thank you so much. Welcome.
Thank you so much. It's absolutely lovely to be back. I think this is our fifth Island Summit that we've been sponsoring sessions at. Again, it's such an exciting opportunity to be with colleagues from right around the world. So thank you so much for this. We've been running our island network at the Edge Foundation for about 6 or 7 years now, bringing together islands around the UK and then increasingly around the world as well, to think about education and training and skills through the island, through the lens of an island context. We know that globally we're facing some similar challenges in terms of preparing for future technology, preparing young people for the future, but we also know that there are some specific challenges and specific opportunities that islands face with smaller communities, with sometimes the challenge geographically of getting teachers, with the challenge of perhaps a tighter or a different labour market. And so we found it really powerful to bring together colleagues from islands around the world. And one of the things that always amuses us when we have our network meetings is when we hear from colleagues maybe from the Caribbean and then from Europe, even though they're on the other side of the globe, those colleagues always find things very much in common, find similar context because of their island work. So it's been an absolute pleasure to run that, and it's a fantastic opportunity here to showcase some amazing work that's being done in this space. So it's going to be a really positive session. We're going to be talking about solutions to some of the challenges that are out there, and in particular, we're going to be focusing down today on this challenge of preparing young people for the future, which is obviously changing rapidly. And I know that all of us here are wanting to develop the kind of skills around sustainability, around new energy sources that we want for the future. So doing that in an island context is what we're going to be focusing on today. In terms of the kind of aim of this session, or the kind of layout of the session, we're going to have 6 quite quick perspectives, and I'm going to be quite tight on time. So we're going to have about 7-8 minutes for each of our speakers, and then a chance for me to just reflect briefly with them, and then a bit of a chance at the end for your Q&A. So let's keep up the momentum. We want it to be interactive. Keep chatting in the chat. Put any questions you might have that you might want me to put to the team in the Q&A, and we'll get through some really exciting examples and then kind of compare and see what resonates with us as an audience, as we can kind of compare those opportunities. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce my first fantastic speaker, somebody I've known from the start of the Island Network, and it's been an absolute pleasure. Stuart Penn is head of service at Skills Jersey, one of the Channel Islands that sit between England and France. And Stuart and the team at Skills Jersey have been doing some really fantastic work to understand how the labour market is changing on their island and how that's going to affect the kind of skills that are needed for the future. So Stuart, I'd like to welcome you to the virtual stage to present first.
Thank you very much, Ollie. I am going to share my screen and take you through, hopefully, all the things that we've been doing here, in particular, our labour supply and demand model, which you can currently see on your screen, but I'm going to switch it so that you can see my slides. There we are. Okay. So what we tried to do in Jersey was understand what is our supply and demand issues now and in the future, and with that, what are the skills supply and demand issues that are going to come with it. I'm not an economist, and I'm going to try and make this as simple as possible because it is talking about a lot of economic factors, but that's not me. I'm more of a skills man. So I thought I'll keep it nice and simple. I'm going to talk about why we're doing this, what it is we're actually doing, and then how are we doing it. So why are we doing it? Some simple things. Obviously, we need to identify the emerging skills demands on an island that's only 9 by 5 miles in area. We need to identify what is a mismatch going to be in the future between the skills that are available on the island and the jobs that are being offered. We also need to minimize skill shortages now and in the future. Obviously, we need to understand what's the economic consequences of an unskilled workforce in an area where we can't afford to have more and more people joining us on the island. Meanwhile, we need to be maximising economic growth and competitiveness within our industries and sectors. We need to also develop programs that are tailored to our anticipated skills demands. As a lot of you know, there's a lot of academia and educationalists in the room. If we're going to stand up courses like degree apprenticeships, it's going to take a lot of time to get those stood up and ready to run, never mind actually see people entering the workforce from it. That includes technological advancements we need to understand, and then we need to ensure that we've got a steady supply of skills workers coming from out of our schools. And let's face it, that's the real why as to why we needed to do it. We need to look at our young people and see what is the workforce they're going to be entering between now and 2040. So what is it that we did? Well, during the pandemic that we've all tried to forget, but we can't, we had just started working with a company called Geek Talent that was monitoring our labour market adverts and vacancy management, what advert jobs were being advertised where. And this proved invaluable within Jersey during the pandemic. I was able to update ministers daily as to which jobs were being advertised for the most, and therefore we could shift our workforce into the roles that we needed to have them in. Afterwards, we started being asked about, well, have you got a skills barometer then? Because this is great for current skills gaps, but what about future skills gaps? So I started looking at the Northern Ireland skills barometer and talking to the people over there as to how they did it. My economy department then stepped in and started working with London Economics to come up with a supply and demand model for the government of Jersey to look at what will our workforce be in 2040. So how does this tool work? And this is where I'm really glad that I've got such a short amount of time, because I don't want to tie myself in knots with definitions. Basically, we put in some scenario choices and it kicks out projections. The projections are, what are the labour demands and what's the labour supply? Okay, and then what's the mismatch? To pick the scenarios, we can rattle through things like growth rate and labour demand. What are the shortages compared to 2021? Are they the same as 2021 or are they different? For the supply, we can look at, okay, well, how do you want your migration? Do you want it up, down, or the same? And what employment rate do you want between 65 to 66-year-olds? We're also looking at raising our minimum school age, so they put that factor in there for us as well. And then finally, there's a redistribution of where is our migrant workforce coming. Here is a real breakdown of the definitions of what that all means. Hopefully you'll get to share these slides so that you'll be able to have a good read into that. And then there's the definitions for the supply projections. So how does it look once we punch all of that in? It will kick out data like this, where whatever scenario I put in here is clearly quite a negative one because we've got lots of shortages across the island here. So this tells us each year in each sector, what are we going to be missing and how many people, which is these numbers here. I can then also go into this and customize it. So if I want to say, okay, we're going to lose our finance industry, but we're going to rapidly improve our transport and storage, I can go in and change these figures here, and that will punch out some more data and give me some different results. So it helps me look at what is our growth sectors if we want to try and predict these future view. Now, that's great for demand and labour, but what about the skills part of it? Well, then we go back to the Geek Talent data that this is pulling from, and we take a look at each of the sectors. So I'm going to choose information and communication here, and that will drill down into what are the current skills being asked for in all the job adverts in that industry at the moment. Now, that's wonderful for current skills. What we don't know are future skills, and we don't know what we don't know. But there are some people that do. So we need to look at how our skill system works, where we have our government working with training providers on Ireland and with our employers, because they're the experts in their industry. So they play a massive part in understanding what skills priorities we need to give investment to. So my yellow circles here, economic insights, labour market insights, that comes from our labour supply and demand model. We can then look at what are national and in fact international developments within the skills world as well, or even in technology or within different sectors. Then we gather together our expert representation and start having conversations about, okay, what are these unknown future skills? The example I always give is and I'll get this all wrong, but the construction where you start slotting sectors of buildings together. Well, years ago, working with the construction council in Jersey, we heard about all this happening in the UK, but it was years away from coming to Jersey. But we started having conversations, okay, what courses do we need if we start using that type of model of building here on Ireland? And that gave us exactly what we were looking for. It was an unknown future skill we knew nothing about, but by looking across the water to the UK, we were able to identify those skills and start plugging the demand in advance. And that is probably the quickest presentation I've ever done. So I'll hand back over to Ollie.
Well, you get full marks for staying on track, Stuart. That's fantastic. So this is such an interesting model. I think we're seeing we do a lot of work on kind of skills challenges around the world, not just on islands, and we're hearing the same message over and over again. There's two kind of key things. One is the kind of tech that we're seeing at the moment. AI is a horrible word, but like scraping the details off job adverts gives us that live insight into the skills that is needed now. And then, as you say, what you've done really is taken that one step forward and started to predict. And I love what you're saying about kind of or how you've drawn on international examples there. So you've used a model from Northern Ireland, but you've also used some kind of insights from mainland UK to help get kind of an early understanding of what's happening.
Absolutely, and we're actually looking closer into Europe and France now as well, because we are closer to France than we are to the UK. So we've started a lot more communication over the water that way too.
That's really, really impressive, and I think it kind of speaks to the opportunity for events like this and links like this for people to share what's coming. If another island wanted to kind of start down this route, Stuart, and start to do a bit of crystal ball gazing themselves, what would be some of your top tips to kind of help them get started?
I think the top tips are, if you're not already doing it, do that whole skill system piece of making sure you've got your government, your training providers and your industry experts in the room having those conversations. Once you get that piece going, you then identify what data you're missing. And that's where things like the labour market or vacancy management scraping comes from, or any other way of scraping data that's useful for predicting skills gaps. I would say economists and the economy department within governments is a very important part to pay in skills.
It's really, really helpful. And I think one of the other things that really resonated with me from what you were saying was that this is helping you to give really good advice to your ministers as well. So I know a lot of colleagues from the poll at the start are involved in kind of the public sector on their island. And obviously ministers around the world are only saying, what should we be prioritizing? What are the skills of the future? So I guess it's also useful from that point of view, being able to give a good answer to that question when you're asked it.
Absolutely, and you get more use or better use out of the public purse then as well. If you're using government funds and public funds for skills initiatives, you want to know that you're on as close as you can to the right track.
Brilliant. Stuart, that was such a great start. Thank you so much. A really good insight into how we might use the current data and also a bit of crystal ball gazing to start to set the skills for the future. Thank you. And we'll welcome all of our panelists back at the end for a conversation and to answer some questions. But now I have the opportunity to introduce another fantastic member of our Island Network and somebody who's been a key part of that. So Jan Gimbert is the employability lead on further education and higher education support in the Isle of Man Department of Education. So Jan, I know you've got a great presentation to give us. I'm going to share your slides and you're going to nudge me to move on when you want me to.
Thanks, Ollie. So I'm going to talk about the work that we've been doing over the last couple of years around developing an Ireland employability and careers framework. Ollie, next slide, please. The aims for the employability and careers framework are on the screen there, but what I'd like to do is give you a little bit of context around it, because if I give you the context, you'll understand where the aims have come from, perhaps. We're an island between England and Ireland in the Irish Sea. We have 32 primary schools, 5 secondary schools, and a college of further and higher education. Our main industries are finance, high-end engineering and manufacture, construction, and then more traditional industries such as farming, fishing, hospitality and tourism make up a very small part of our economy now. We have a low unemployment rate, which runs between 0.5 and 0.7%. And our school leaving age is 16, but between 85 and 90% of our year 11 leavers each year stay in education for a further 2 years. What we've seen over the last few years are some interesting patterns emerging on the destinations of our 18-year-old school leavers. In 2016, 18% of 18-year-olds leaving schools went straight into the workforce, whereas last year in 2022, this was 33%. And this has been a positive choice by some of our school leavers, and employers locally have offered a number of training contracts that have attracted students and school leavers to stay on island rather than go off island for university. We have a broad balanced curriculum at Key Stage 4 where we draw on a range of international and national qualifications and awarding bodies, and pre-vocational and vocational qualifications remain a feature of our education system. So last year, the number of entries that we had for year 11 that were pre-vocational or vocational qualifications was around about 13%, and that's grown from 7% over the last 4 years. So in education, we have a curriculum statement called Essentials for Learning, E4L, which requires learners to start thinking about how they learn right from the time they start primary school. We also have Isle of Man government priorities and department priorities that link to this piece of work. And obviously we are always looking to review current research and best practice in this area. Thanks, Ollie. Next slide. So a positive career really does mean something different to everyone. You can see a definition of a positive career up there from the Career Development Institute work in 2021. We felt very strongly that this framework should help learners skill up for life so they can make good careers decisions themselves in an ever-changing and evolving employment context. People's career journeys have changed massively over the last few generations, yet we know some of the biggest influences on young people's career choices are their parents and grandparents. Next slide, please, Ollie. We've developed a framework structure that reinforces the importance of broad transferable employability or lifelong skills that are relevant to all sectors of employment alongside the normality of non-linear careers. Next slide, please, Ollie. So the principles that we've developed our employability and careers framework around, you can see there on the screen. But what this really was a coalescing of research, resources, thinking, and a wide range of experience around transitions in education, metacognition or learning about learning, employability skills, and careers theory and practice. I'm going to go through each of these principles now and just give you a little bit more detail. Next slide, please, Ollie. So what you can see here is our graphic, which outlines our employability and careers framework, learning for life, creating pathways from classrooms to careers. You can see the real focus on an individual. You can see how we've sort of put our employability skills or our lifelong learning skills right in the centre, and that forms the core of everything that we do in this area. And we also have a foundation, a really strong foundation, which is an employability and careers entitlement offer. And the focus of that is preparing young people for transitions as they move through our education system. Next slide, please, Ollie. So in terms of being learner focused, but supportive of wider systems, to have an impact, we really felt that personalisation for learning had to be the starting point, and therefore needed to be focused on developing skills that would stay with the learners throughout their lives and support their ownership of their career decisions. Next slide, please. We've done an awful lot of work over probably about the last 5 or 6 years about language that's used for broad transferable employability skills. There was some feedback we had from employers a number of years ago, which was telling us that despite all of the work that we've done around metacognition and skills, that they felt that our young people weren't prepared for the world of work. And what we found was that young people weren't very good at articulating age-appropriate examples of where they develop these broad transferable skills. And what we found was actually the language was really confusing, with lots of different words being used to frame the same skill. So what we did was we did a meta-analysis of all of the words that our 16-year-olds were exposed to, and teamwork, problem solving and communication dropped out straight away. And then there was something there about self-awareness, resilience, and the ability to learn and relearn. And what we do with this now is we use it as a unifying language, not a uniform language, but a bit of a translator. We use it at events that we run centrally around careers and employability, and we also use it when we're working with students on transition points, you know, post 16, post 18, but even younger than that. Next slide, please, Ollie. Experience working in secondary school has given me sort of a bit of a background on this, and the idea that good career choices made by learners were always dependent on the reality of them knowing themselves and knowing about opportunities. And Ikigai is a really powerful lens. What it does is it actually puts students at the center of all of this. It helps them become more aware of themselves and opportunities if they think about what they love, what they're good at, what does the world need, and what they can be paid for. They are definitely in the driving seat if they're looking at careers and employability through that sort of lens. Next slide, please, Ollie. The focus of our employability and careers education entitlement offer is to make sure that all of our students have similar opportunities. It doesn't matter what setting they're in, from primary to secondary, into further education and higher education. In primary, they learn about different people's life journeys, including the jobs that they do, to support their broadening of horizons, challenge of stereotypes, and raising aspirations. The focus of that is you can't be what you can't see. And research tells us that probably by about the age of 7, that students or young people and children have made their decisions about what they can and can't do in the future. Secondary builds on this, and then FE and HE phase consolidates the learning around that. Next slide, please, Ollie. So the structure of our employability and careers framework is a careers and entitlement education offer policy, which means all schools have to do it. We also have some audit tools and a resource directory, which are guidance and support for schools. And basically, this gives the schools a choice of how they want to move this forward, because we're not starting with a blank page here. Schools have worked with us, and University College Isle of Man and staff who are involved in this system have worked with us to develop this employability and careers framework. And it's important that they can continue to develop it in context based on the needs and requirements of their learners. Next slide, please, Ollie. So we go back to this, and literally this is hot off the press. The policy came into effect on the 1st of September, and we're now in the process of implementing this across our education system. We're doing it with staff again. Key middle and senior leader groups meet, and this is part of their agendas. We're focusing on sharing practice based around the entitlement offer statements. And this obviously fits into a wider island ongoing dialogue around education skills and the economy. We're also doing a separate piece of work, which I suppose builds on this like universal provision, where we're starting to capture the support that we provide for those who are vulnerable on transition in that post-16 space. So, for example, young people who are in care or young people who aren't attending school. And once we've captured those options, we're going to see if we've got areas of good practice that we want to share, and any gaps that perhaps we need to address separately to the universal offer. Thanks, Ollie.
Thank you, Dan. That was absolutely great, and a really nice follow on from Stuart there, because I think you picked up a lot of the skills that Stuart's talking about, those transferable skills that we're hearing, as you said, time and time again from the reports out there right across the world as the things that employers are looking for, and you're embedding them right in the heart of your curriculum. One of the things I love about what you're doing is kind of such a strategic approach. So you're looking at it at every single stage, and you're really clearly kind of embedding it. Do you think that's important? I mean, obviously, it's, you know, individual educators can make a difference, but having something that's also kind of there from the department in the Isle of Man, saying this is important, kind of structuring it in each phase, has that been a kind of a key part of your strategy?
I think so, because I know our schools are doing it. It almost gives permission and credence to that focus. Our primary school curriculum is very much built on those metacognitive skills, and we're probably one of the few systems where students are starting to look at these broad transferable employability skills, although we call them different things, right from when they start school. So I think actually it makes sense in terms of some of the things that went previously, but also in terms of feedback that we've had from employers and others in terms of helping those young people prepare for a future that we don't know quite what it's going to look like.
Yeah, that's such an important point, isn't it? I think from everything we're reading, those transferable skills are the best kind of prevention we can give. You know, the labour market is changing, as Stuart said, with all of his research. But the thing that seems to stay constant is those kind of transferable skills, 21st century skills, whatever we call them, as you say, teamworking, problem solving. Do you want to just give us kind of, I guess, a practical example, maybe one that sticks in your mind? Because I know you spend a lot of time with the schools out there, where you've seen a school really changing their behaviour to embed some of this work.
Oh, you put me on the spot now. I think what I've seen is what was nice about doing this piece of work is obviously I normally sit in secondary and further and higher education, and one of the things that I did was I did a presentation for our primary head teachers, and one of the ideas I had at that point was to try and get them to do almost like a record of achievement, record of experience at the end of year 6. And they very clearly came back to me and said, look, this is in everything that we do, and trying to pull it out of it would be almost like counterintuitive. So we sort of accepted that. And then I've been into a few primary schools since, and as soon as you walk into the school, you see their version of employability skills on the wall there, and you have children. I've been in classrooms where children are just using these skills without actually thinking about employment in the future, but actually they're focusing on them, and it's supporting their learning, but it's supporting their self-awareness and understanding of themselves, which will make them more confident when they do have to think about where they're going to go in the future and where their pathways will be in terms of employment and their life journeys.
That's fantastic, Jan. I think there's nothing better when you've gone through a program of change to see it not only happening on the ground in the schools, but then to hear the young people kind of using that language themselves and embedding it. I think that's a real kind of fantastic testament to the work you've done over the last few years. Jan, thank you so much. That was absolutely great.
Thank you.
We're going to cross to our next speaker now and get a different approach. So welcoming to the virtual stage, Neem Rand, who's the headmaster of Kuressaare Medical, which is the regional training centre in Estonia. Neem, I'm going to share your slide, so feel free to just let me know when you want to move on as well.
Thank you. Warm welcome, everybody, and thank you to having me on board. I'm pleased to share you my story and hope you're going to believe in it. A little bit about my background. I'm a qualified teacher as technical subjects, headmaster at Ametikool since beginning of 90s. Also the vice president of European Hotel and Tourism School Association. I'm myself resident of the little island in the west coast of Saaremaa, called Vilsandi, and elected headman of the village and the leader of the local rescue team. And this is almost every day's view from my home window. Next, please. Little brief about Estonia. It's a country with a very, very small number of population, just 1.3 million. But could you make the next click? And no, please back. But the area with the same size like Denmark and Netherlands, but locating in the very up north in Europe, side to Russia and close to Finland and Sweden. And what is important, that's 99% of our public services are catchable online. Next, please. Education has been highly evaluated through the generations, and by the end of 19th century, the literacy rate was quite high. And at the beginning of Estonian Republic from 1920, the sixth grade became almost compulsory. During the Soviet occupation, the secondary education were compulsory, and starting from beginning of 90s, the modernization of Estonian education system has begun. Next, please. Here are the major milestones in the restart of the education system. But what I like to notice from beginning, it has been the time of the huge changes in the beginning when I start, and all the regulations became later, and it's came for us, like for my school, the real boost that's we can visit the neighboring countries, little islands, and pick up the best practice ideas and integrate to our system without strict regulations. Next, please. And we can skip also the next one. This is education system at now in Estonia. It's 9 years the primary education or basic education, and after the basic education, the students will choose either the secondary education or occasionally secondary education. And approximately 70% of students, they will choose the secondary, and 30% to the vocation will move to the vocational education. Of course, its percentage could be the 60-40, but I can still dream on. Next, please. This is one of the important statistics on my table through the ages. And in the beginning of my career, when I visited one of the little island in the Baltics, then I saw the scheme that was filled with the young generation until with the age of 16. Then everybody's left the island and they came back in the age of 55 plus. And this has been always one of my goals at my table, to provide the different kind of the vocational training to all the youngsters, that they shouldn't leave the island. Next, please. Vocational education is a free of charge for everybody and flexible form of studies in Estonia. The state has specialized the project analyze for the labor market to find out the skills are needed on the future. Next click, please. Our schools are in a close cooperation with the private sector, and practical placements are compulsory at the all curriculums. Next click, please. And what has been in the race, moving from vocational education to the higher education, it's around the 20%, and vice versa. It's become increasingly popular in Estonia. Next, please. It's not myself yet, but maybe after 15 years. But what is important fact, it's age group of 25 plus. It has been, it's attending more than 50% in my school. Next, please. Some figures about my education establishment. Established in the beginning of 90s, owned by state. 850 students in initial vocational training, plus we're dealing also with the further training courses, but more than 50% from this 850, they are in the age of 25 plus. 25% students from other regions, they came from other countries. We're working in the 2 different campuses, and we do have around 118 staff members. Next, please. What is a little different of the education establishment, of vocational education establishment on the mainland, is we got 18 different curricular groups, and this is a little bit untypical for this size of the schools here in Estonia. And we own the 54 different curriculums. We teach on the level 3, 4, and 5 by EQF. We have divided our institution between the 5 leading teachers, and we're also offering support services for students. Next, please. And these are the names of our units: technology, design, tourism services, social care and beauty services, IT and business. Next, please. We have been always eager to the international cooperation, and we has been tried to learn from the best practices. And in the very beginning of my career, I got the chance to visit Åland, the little island in the close of Finnish border, and I got confirmation that we are on the right track, and we're opening the first training restaurant in vocational school in the beginning of '92. And we also studied and copied, like it may be correct word, some new curriculums to integrate to our institution. And there is a little list of them. Of course, we has been participated in a different beautiful names of the project, and also the AHT, what is really unique example of international cooperation on the European level. And then for the last point, I'd like to raise up the Fraserburg Academy, that I got a chance to visit in the beginning of this year. And this is really beautiful school orientated to the cooperation with the community, and they integrated all the subjects with the cooperation with the local entrepreneurs, and they tried to encourage the students to find the study routes what is linked with the local economy. Next, please. That's me. This is our new initiatives. We during last 1.5 years prepared for the new curriculums, and we planning to open the blade repair technician on level 5 by 2024, and to become as a GVO and the IRATA safety training license. These are the safety trainings what are compulsory for the wind turbine technicians, and also to start by 2025 wind turbine technician level 5. Why? This is especially that's on the west coast. They're planning the huge development on the offshore wind parks, and by 2030 they're providing that there could be almost 200 or 300 new jobs in this sector, and by 2050 it will raise up to 1,000. Next, please. And that's it. Thank you.
That's wonderful, Neem. Thank you so much. And lovely to see that connection back to Fraserburg Academy, which is one of the schools that we've worked with a bit over here in the UK with our colleagues in the Wood Foundation, one of the charities we work with up in Scotland. So lovely to hear that you're connected with them already. I think the work that you're doing is so fascinating, kind of bringing vocational education to the fore. And I was really interested in seeing what you said about that culture of lifelong learning. Is that something that is innately Estonian, or is that something that you've built over a number of years? And how have you gone about that?
In Estonia, we faced the demographic situation. We call them the babies of the singing revolution, and this is just the demographic growth, and this start to fell down, and then we start the curricular development and start to attract also in different versions the more trained the persons on board, and providing the different kind of curriculums for them.
That's fantastic, and really good to see the work that you're doing on the wind farms and the renewable energy. It's very topical, particularly for a lot of colleagues around this virtual table who are involved in sustainability. I just wanted to also ask the kind of broader skills that Stuart and Jan talked about, things like teamworking, problem solving. Are they something that you have managed to embed into your vocational curriculum too?
Yeah, we're using a lot of the problem solving, the format with our training, as we have the students in a different curriculums. We're using a lot of the teamwork between the different departments or units, That's like our art and design students will cooperate on the project together with IT students, and that's this kind of examples.
Neem, thank you so much. That was another brilliant example. We're going to cross back to the Channel Islands now, and I'm going to welcome Jeanette Hart to the virtual stage. Jeanette is Vice Principal at the Guernsey College of Further Education. Jeanette, welcome, and I'm going to present your slides, so just nudge me when you want to move on as well.
Thank you. I'm just going to talk through and give some context about what we've done here at the college in terms of our curriculum development. I'm going to start with just giving a bit of a context of who we are and where we are, just for those of you that don't know. So we are very close to Jersey, and you've just heard from our colleague from Jersey. We are about 25 miles from the coast of France, so nearer to France than we are the UK. The bailiwick of Guernsey is made up from the island of Guernsey and Alderney, Herm and Sark as well, and we do provide post-16 education to those other islands. We are the only post-16 provider of vocational and technical education on the island, and there is one sixth form centre on island that provides A-level provision and IB provision as well. If you just click onto the next slide, please, you'll just see there that all those little blue points are just the employers that we work with, because one of the areas that I'm going to talk about is just how we've developed our curriculum with our employers. I'm just going to talk to you about some of that context. So if you just click onto the next slide, please. We've got a population of about 65,000 people, so we're very small. The whole island is about 62 kilometres squared as well, and we are known as an offshore finance centre because then we have low tax, so we've got a lot of finance industries who are set up here in Guernsey. Predominantly the majority of our employers are within the service industry. We do have quite a lot of tourism in Guernsey, and the States of Guernsey is one of the largest employers on the island. We have very, very low unemployment, less than 0.2% people here of unemployed, and currently at the last data set that we looked at, we had 1,500 more jobs than we had people. We've got a very specific and strict population management regime in terms of employment licences. That means that it can be difficult to recruit here to jobs on island. The average cost of housing and the cost of living is much higher here in Guernsey than it is in the UK. However, having said that, we still do have a lot of poverty, and there's quite a lot of unseen poverty on the island, and 14% of households live in relative poverty here in Guernsey. We tend to be an island of extremes because we also have a lot of wealth here in Guernsey as well. And the education system's in a period of change, and that has been going on for a number of years now. There's lots of change going on with our high school education for our 11 to 16, and post 16 there's a lot of change as well for the college in relation to transforming into the Guernsey Institute. Next slide, please. We have around 250 courses. We're based on 3 campuses. And our main areas that we have provision in are within healthcare and public services, construction and engineering. We have a lot of apprentices here at Guernsey. And then we also have business, sport and service industries, and some leadership and digital for more mature students. Creative and performing arts is one of our largest areas here on island, and that doesn't necessarily correlate with the amount of employment there is on island for students who have completed courses in those industries. And we do a lot of English and maths provision for 16-year-olds who've left school without GCSE in English and maths, and for the adult community as well. Next slide, please. Just got a couple of charts that give you an overview of our type of provision. So the majority of our provision is for the 16 to 22-year-olds, so the school leavers, and the majority of that provision is full-time. We do have then a lot of apprentices. We do most of our provision in construction and engineering and hairdressing and hospitality and catering is an apprenticeship provision. We're not large enough as a college to have provision that is full-time and apprentices. So we've evolved the curriculum over a couple of years as well, so that we can really meet the needs and demands of employers. And just to give you an example of that, we used to, a couple of years ago, have hospitality and catering provision that was full-time, and we had an apprenticeship route, but because demand from employers lessened for that provision, we went down an apprenticeship only route. So our curriculum has changed and shifted over the years as well. We work very closely with our high schools as well, and we provide level 2 provision and level 1 provision for the 14 to 16 who want to do a vocational pathway when they are still at school. So they would study that in year 10 and year 11 in the UK. We have a lot of part-time professional, some adult and community learning, and a very small amount of higher education provision. The majority of our students go off island for university level provision. Next slide. Thank you. And this again just shows that although we've got a broad range of curriculum in terms of demand, most of the hours that we teach is for our full-time students. Next slide, thank you. So in terms of our place in the community, what we've really done in terms of a piece of work over the last couple of years is we've had really strong employer involvement and engagement in our curriculum development, so that we know that we are meeting the skills needs and the employer needs on island where that is possible for us. So since about 2015, that work has carried on, and so each vocational and technical area has an employer board where they've got employers who are involved in the development of the curriculum and the delivery of the curriculum as well. Last year, as you can see there, 98% of our students went on to a positive destination. So that was either directly into employment or into another higher level further education course or onto HE, either here in Guernsey or off to the UK. The majority of students in Guernsey who progress onto higher education do so when they go to the UK. Next slide, thank you. So we really have focused on working with our employers as partners, and we really feel that that's enriched the curriculum for our students and really given it a career focus. And one of our headlines that we use across the college and a lot of our presentations that we do is that we are a career focused college. And we're focused really on what's right at this moment in time to meet employers' needs. And we're developing that further to make sure that we are prepared for the future as well. We've done quite a bit of research with the World Economic Forum. We've been to some of their seminars that they've held over the summer. So a piece of work that we're currently doing is to develop the curriculum so that it meets the skills priorities. The World Economic Forum done a piece of work on what the top 10 skill priorities for employers are going to be in 2027. So we've got a group of people from across college from different areas who are working on developing the curriculum so that it can still be future focused as well as currently meeting demands of employers. Next slide. Thank you. So we have this as our statement, and this is how we evidence that we're career focused. So we make sure that each student has got clear ambitions, so they've all got a career plan, and we review that as part of their curriculum delivery. We make sure that each different vocational area is really clear in terms of their curriculum intent and the development and the progression routes that are available for our students. And we've got really good examples of where all of our full-time students go out on work experience. We work with local employers and they deliver projects so the students can get involved in real live work scenarios that they know are going to be used in the workplace. And we get employers to come in and talk to students as well. So there's a wide variety of things that we do. We've also done a lot of work on focusing our professional development opportunities for staff to make sure that they are up to date in not only the pedagogy of teaching and learning, but also their original craft and their vocational and technical background. And so we've really, so to summarise what we've done, we've really developed our apprenticeship provision. That's been running for 73 years. That's well respected on Ireland and very high demand for that. But the other piece of work that we've done is on focusing and developing that curriculum offer for our full-time students as well. And then we'll do further work to future-proof that so that students and staff know how to incorporate AI and sustainability into their curriculum. And that is me. Click the next slide. That's it. Yeah, thank you.
That's wonderful, Jeanette. So helpful. I mean, I think apprenticeships are such a powerful program in all parts of the world, and I think they're growing, in all of the countries that we're working with. It's great that your apprenticeship program has such a heritage. 73 years is really impressive, and yeah. I'm sure it's very well known and well respected in the island. But it can be a challenge to find enough employers who kind of want to be involved. How do you go about kind of keeping that momentum up and persuading employers to take part?
Yes, yeah, it's taken us a long time. I mentioned that we started on a real piece of employer engagement back in 2015, and I would say it's taken us a good 8 years to get to the point that we are now. So say, for example, with the construction industry, we've got a really good employer for an education board, and they are on board. But that has taken a lot of time, because sometimes we would hold events and perhaps you'd only get one employer turning up. But we've just kept on going, chipping away at it. And hospitality and catering is another area where we've got really supportive employers on board, but we struggle to recruit students to that area at the moment. So I think focusing in on building up really good relationships with employers and meeting with them regularly and keeping them up to date and communicated with is being key to how we've managed to move that forward.
That's wonderful. Yeah, there's nothing that can act as a kind of as a bigger incentive than those kind of personal relationships, I think, between an education institution, FE College, and the employers. So, Jeanette, that's absolutely fantastic. Thank you so much. We're going to be crossing to the Caribbean next, and I'd love to welcome Keith Nurse. Keith is President of Science at the College of Science, Technology and Applied Arts in Trinidad and Tobago. Keith, welcome to the virtual stage. Hi, Keith. Can you hear us okay?
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you see me?
Perfect. We can't see you yet. We can hear you, though.
The video is not coming on.
That's absolutely fine. We can hear you. So you go ahead. I'm going to present your slides, and let me just get those on screen for you. Here we go. Thank you, Keith.
Great. Thank you very much, Ollie. It's a huge pleasure to be participating in this year's Virtual Island Summit. I've been following it for a number of years. This is my first time participating. Kudos to the organizers as well as the sponsors. This panel is focused on the issue of future skills, prepare young people for work in an island context. Most of the presenters thus far are working and living in the developed part of the world. So most of what I'll be talking about relates to some of the same issues. Okay, you get to see me now.
Yeah, we can see you as well now, Keith. Thank you.
Okay, great. So I will talk a little bit about contextual issues that differentiates a developed country higher educational context from that of a developing country one. And I'll try and do that very briefly, because really I only have 3 slides that talk about what we're doing at the college. So I wanted to focus on that, recognizing that a lot of the key issues would have been replicated in some of the other presentations. So Trinidad and Tobago is a former British colony or English colony, and it's a small island developing state with a population of 1.3 million, similar to the size of Estonia in terms of population, but obviously a smaller land territory compared to Estonia. I know Estonia well. I used to serve on one of the boards at what used to be called Tallinn University, which is now called Taltech. So I've visited there many times. So Trinidad and Tobago is an petro state. It's an oil exporting, fossil fuel exporting, gas exporting economy, but we're faced with declining reserves and consequently declining share in our both employment, but also in terms of economic earnings, foreign exchange earnings in particular. So there's a huge demand for increasing the diversification of the economy. And one of the things that I've been arguing as an economist and a trade policy strategist for a number of years is that diversification, economic diversification does not come without innovation. And if you're not investing in innovation, it is unlikely that you'll be able to facilitate this process of economic diversification. And when you look at the data for countries like Trinidad and Tobago and other small island developing states, their investment in research and development, if you use that as a proxy, is small, if not minuscule, relative to what they're spending. They are spending a fair amount on higher education, particularly in terms of the institutions, but these institutions are not tasked with transforming the economy at its core because the funding isn't associated with that area. So one of the things that we've been doing at the College of Science, Technology, and Applied Arts in Trinidad and Tobago is to shift that narrative and so on. Mind you, I've only been on the job as president of COSTAT, as we call it, which is the acronym, for the last 10 months, but we've already begun to shift the framework from the old framework. So if you go to the next slide, one thing I wanted to countenance is this, that whereas in the previous presentation, it was said that they have very low unemployment, well, in our case, in Trinidad and Tobago, youth unemployment is 12%, and it accounts for 46% of all unemployment. So really, youth unemployment is a major issue for us. It's also that Trinidad and Tobago, like many other small island developing states in the Caribbean, we're faced with high levels of immigration. So 60 to 70% of our tertiary educated population migrate. And so the retention levels in the economy tend to be low, partly because of the low absorptive capacity of the economy. So let me talk a little bit now about COSTAT and its strategy going forward. We've introduced a new academic structure. We've moved from 5 schools to 6 schools. Our most recent school is a School of Environment, Circular Economy, and Sustainability. Why did we do that? We have now infused sustainability or sustainable futures as one of the 3 key planks of the college going forward. The other 2 key planks are digital transformation, and the third is global pathways. And we recognize, based on all the data, all of the analysis of where the global economy is going, that sustainability is at the core. So we've infused that into all of the programming in all of the other schools. And we have recognized also that digitalization is absolutely critical. So digital has been infused into all of the schools. Some of them now have it in their title. And so we've refocused the amount of effort on building a capacity to deliver what we call a STEAM approach. So it's science, technology, engineering, and entrepreneurship, along with arts and mathematics, which is where we are focusing increasingly on things like data sciences. So already 66% of our programming is focused on applied skills-based, project-based learning, which is where a lot of the new focus is taking place. We've been doing this now for 20 years. What we're doing is sharpening the focus. And what we are noticing is that, people graduate from other universities and then they come to us to train so that they can get a job in a very specific area. For example, in medical technologies, we have the best labs, not just in Trinidad and Tobago, but in the Southern Caribbean for sure. And so as we proceed, we've reframed the academic schools to service this burgeoning market for what we call STEAM-related jobs. So next slide, please. We have recognized that the old model of just providing training to gain certification at bachelor level, associate level, or even some kind of graduate diploma is not sufficient anymore. So what we have done is to infuse a new strategy whereby we are training in an upskilling academy framework where the specialized training is linked to business incubation and to acceleration services. This is where we aim to really push the innovation agenda by ensuring that our graduates can tap into the new growth sectors. Now, we've outlined 6 key growth sectors: sustainability and climate change. And this is where we've already started with a new upskilling academy focused on the circular economy. So we're looking at upcycling and so on. So we're already working on that with funding from the Inter-American Development Bank Lab. And we're in conjunction with the Cropper Foundation here in Trinidad and Tobago. But we're working on creative industries and new media, food and agri-entrepreneurship, health and medical technologies, digital and cyber security, as well as tourism and destination management, all key growth areas, not just for Trinidad and Tobago, but across the English-speaking Caribbean and the wider Caribbean. The last key component, if you go to the next slide, is that we are linking both our upskilling academy and our academic schools to what we're calling a tech hub. And this is where we are ramping out the access to the technologies of the future. Well, many of those technologies are already here. So for example, everything from 3D printing to robotics and animation related digital technologies are already with us. But in most tertiary institutions, in the Caribbean in particular, we have underinvested in these areas. And so what we're doing is building out that component so that we can say to our students and the wider population, which is that the access to the Tech Hub is not restricted only to students, is that you could come to us with your business ideas, do prototyping, do product commercialization. We can provide business coaching, all in the aim of getting you closer to the marketplace to generate new, not just new jobs, but new entrepreneurial opportunities for those who are so minded and so capable. And so we shift the focus away from just training to focus on training as a mechanism to boost the innovation agenda in the country. So I'll end on that note for now, and maybe we could pick it up in the discussions if there are any other issues that the audience would like me to jump on. Thank you very much, Ollie.
Keith, that was excellent. Thank you so much. And I absolutely love the link you're making there between not just thinking about training, but thinking about training, productivity, economic growth. I think right across the world, we're seeing that important link being made, not just in the island context, but on mainlands as well. And it's really important in every context to reinforce that, as you say, training doesn't exist in isolation. It's about kind of developing those skills that are going to push for economic growth. And I think that's really, really valuable. Again, I just wanted to bring back one of the themes from earlier on and just ask you a bit about, you showed really clearly the different kind of schools and areas that you're training in. Have you got a focus within those on those transferable skills as well, on team working, problem solving? How are you kind of embedding some of those?
Well, that has always been part of our modus operandi. If you look at the name of the college, the word applied is embedded in our name. It's been embedded in all that we offer. And the other thing that differentiates our college from some of the other entities that have been presenting is that over 60% of our target group of people who have been enrolled at the college are young adults who are already either working or have been in the marketplace for some time. It's only now that we have a rising share of those who are matriculating out of secondary school coming to us, which is about 30-35%. So we're not specifically focused on that 16, let's say 16 to 20 age group. Our biggest focus historically has been, I would say 20-plus-year-old young people who have a clearer understanding of what it is they want to do. And so when they come to us, they're fairly determined, and in many instances, they are already working. So it's a different target market from those who are just matriculating out of secondary school.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much, Keith. That was such a valuable contribution. We're going to come to our final panelists, and then we'll bring everyone back onto the stage for a Q&A. So just to welcome Orlando Hewitt, who's Technical Officer at the Cantor Secretariat for TVET Council in Barbados. Orlando, do you want to join us? And I think you're presenting your own slides. So thank you, Keith.
Hi. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Orlando Hewitt. I'm going to just try and share my screen, or Ollie. First and foremost, thanks for inviting us to a very informative and dynamic island summit. Let me just share my screen so that everyone can see. And let me just start my slideshow. Are you seeing the screen, Ollie?
Yeah, I can see the screen. Yeah, you'll just need to move through the slides. It's not showing in full screen mode, but it's fine. We can see it absolutely fine, Orlando. So you get going.
All right. So, I was trying to.
Mr. Orlando, if you press F5 on your keyboard, it should take you to the presentation mode.
All right, great. Thank you for that. All right. Greetings again, everyone. The presentation is about CANTO, which is a Caribbean Association of National Training Authorities. And before I get into a little introduction as to CANTO and how it got germinated, the association consists of 12 CARICOM member countries, which are Antigua and Barbuda, Barbados, Belize, Grenada, Dominica, Guyana, St. Kitts and Nevis, St. Lucia, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Trinidad and Tobago, Suriname. I think I've covered all. And of course, we have 2 professional associations, which includes the Caribbean Examination Council, which is a regional body that is responsible for administering academic exit exams at the end of high school, secondary school throughout the Caribbean, at 5th form as well as 6th form. And the CXC is a main body that provides what is known as the Caribbean Vocational Qualification at the level 1 or the entry level only. We also have an associate member, which is a consulting firm by the name of Dunpeer Barnett and Associates. Additionally, we have persons who have indicated interest in becoming members of CANTO, to include Haiti and the British Virgin Islands. And in short order, in the very near future, we should have an expanded membership. So the vision of CANTO is to develop a world-class Caribbean workforce which supports and enables a competitive and responsive region. Our mission is to promote quality, relevance, equity in education and training towards the development of a certified, competent, and globally competitive workforce. It is an apex body which is responsible for technical, vocational, and education training throughout the region, primarily in the Caribbean community, which is known as CARICOM. And the organization was established to lead and facilitate the coordination and rationalization of TVET throughout the region. What is very interesting to note.
Orlando, sorry, but we still cannot see your slides on presentation mode. If you could check that out, please.
Oh, you're not seeing it in presentation mode? Let me just resume share. Are you able to see it now?
No, we still only see the first page and the thumbnails of the other ones.
All right, let me just.
Yeah, don't worry.
Okay, just share screen. All right, are you able to see presentation mode now?
Yes, thank
Yes.
you.
All right. All right, so I was just explaining what Cantor is, and I'm just gonna put my arrow. Cantor was established to lead and facilitate coordination and rationalization of TVET in the region. Are you able to see that second bullet? Yes?
Yes, thank you.
Right. So what's very interesting about this virtual island summit is that the majority of participants, based on the quick poll that was done earlier, is apparently from the Caribbean region. And one of the responses of Cantor was to develop a regional qualification that for unfettered movement of labor throughout the region. So we conceptualized a vocational qualification at various levels, from levels 1 up to levels 5, and persons can move from Trinidad to Jamaica to Antigua and Barbuda to Grenada with this vocational qualification to seek employment within various occupational areas for which we have industry approved standards. My slide is not moving. No, my screen is not moving. Okay, all right, it is moving now. So Cantor was endorsed as the implementation arm of CARICOM through a body known as RCM-TVET. This is a regional coordination mechanism for TVET, and it was done so at the 9th meeting of the Council for Human, Social and Development, COSOD, in October 2003. Now, RCM-TVET and COSOD constitutes primarily the ministers of education and permanent secretaries within the education system throughout the region. And Cantor is the platform from which positions on TVET throughout the region, throughout CARICOM, can be clearly articulated and promoted. And of course, we're accountable to COSOD, which is an arm of CARICOM through the RCM-TVET. Some of our goals are as follows: to promote the development of a competitive regional workforce and to facilitate free movement of certified skilled labor within the region, promoting the uniform provision of what we call occupational standards. And we provide training and assessment and certification within the region. We have established a regional certification framework as well as a regional vocational qualification framework known as the CARICOM qualification framework. Cantor has as a primary objective the promotion of career guidance throughout the CSME, the supporting and contributing to the establishment and maintenance of a regional labor market intelligence system, and of course, the advocacy and the promotion of lifelong learning and improving the image and status of TVET throughout the region. We focus on prioritizing diversity and inclusion as prime considerations in TVET provision and the creation of opportunities for equitable and flexible access to learning and skills development. So one of the challenges that Cantor and the national training authorities throughout the region would have experienced over the years is that some NTAs are at a very mature stage as it relates to TVET. Some NTAs are at embryonic stages. At present, Cantor has 8 countries which have been accredited and approved by CARICOM and COSOD to offer the Caribbean vocational qualification. However, we have 5 countries who we are still providing support and capacity in building initiatives so that they can expand their platform and their quality assurance mechanisms in order to offer and to be accredited as CVQ awarding NTAs or TVET councils. So we have a number of partners. We have support from the Commonwealth of Learning. One of the plaguing problems, especially through the pandemic, is that learners were highly disadvantaged during the pandemic because of the absence of a comprehensive online platform. Most of our training initiatives include face-to-face and persons doing what is called practical demonstrations, either on the job or off the job, to demonstrate their competencies. So we have this robust partnership with Commonwealth of Learning, and we're in the emerging stages of rolling out a digital platform which will allow for the provision of open distance learning that will accommodate both training as well as assessment activities. Some of the work activities that we're involved in is one, right? In order to provide a flexible and responsive regional TVET system, CANTA has always been engaged in the development and review of occupational standards and learning materials. At the core of our business model is the development of industry-endorsed and developed occupational standards. And they form the leverage from which all training, assessment, and certification activities are provided. The other big initiative that we're working on is that presently we have a partnership with Brazil through SENAI and the EU to look at digitization of TVET, where we want to have full open distance learning opportunities to all learners throughout the Caribbean for them to receive training, assessment, as well as micro-credentialing and certification online. A big part of the process is how we quality assure training, assessment, and certification. So that quality assurance is looking at our policies and procedures, which also advocate more inclusivity and gender responsiveness. We're strongly advocating the use of micro-credentialing, as my colleague from Trinidad would have spoken about. There is a huge emphasis on ensuring upskilling. We call it laddering up. And we want to promote what is known as lifelong learning, and that TVET is a viable pathway to lifelong learning and to matriculating and articulating into higher level training. And of course, we have the emphasis on the use of open distance and hybrid learning to facilitate enhanced access to TVET in the region. I actually spoke about that already. We are also having some discussions with the International Labour Organization to facilitate assistance with learning materials and support in CBET for instructors. So one of our huge challenges in the region, depending on the level of the maturity of the TVET system, is rather the upgrading and upskilling of instructional staff, not only from industry, in terms of the andragogical skills, but ensuring that our instructors have the requisite competencies to deliver the pedagogical skills. So we are working with ILO, who will facilitate us in terms of enhancing the development of instructors in selected CANTA member countries. Now,
Orlando, just one more minute and then we'll need to wrap things up.
Right. So just to quickly wrap up. So we're focusing on some skills for the future. We're looking at the digital economy. We're looking at robotics. We're looking at artificial intelligence. One of the big areas within the Caribbean is the R&G economy, the creative industries. So we're looking at developing occupational standards and learning materials in the R&G economy. And of course, we're looking at the green and blue economies as it relates to climate change, renewable energies, our oceans, etc. And just to add, we will, in the near future, have a refreshed website However, at present, persons can access information such as our occupational standards from cantoronline.org. Thank you.
Thank you, Orlando. That's absolutely great. Wonderful. I'm going to welcome all of our panelists back onto stage. And Orlando, maybe if you can just switch off your screen share just so that we can see everyone's faces, that would be absolutely great. So just to give my panelists a heads up, I'm going to end by asking everyone for one final reflection about what you might recommend that islands could do to better prepare young people with the skills they might need for the future. But before we get to that, I just wanted to ask a question that's come up quite a few times in the chat, which is all about upskilling young people in an island context in a time when we're kind of facing migration away from islands. And this is something that's come up in a few of your presentations, but I wanted to ask if who would like to kind of kick off there and just share a few reflections about that question of kind of migration away from islands of kind of higher skilled young people and adults. Keith, if you don't mind me putting you on the spot, you mentioned this in your presentation, so maybe I could come to you for a bit of a reflection first.
Yeah, well, I've also done a lot of work on migration and immigration issues. We've done a documentary on it called The Power of the Caribbean Diaspora. There are a couple elements to this process, so it's not a one-way flow. So what we are seeing is that most Caribbean economies have very low absorptive capacity for the number of young people that have been growing, matriculating out of secondary school and particularly out of higher educational institutions. What we are seeing, though, is if you look at the demographics for the Caribbean, by 2050, all Caribbean islands, from all the way from Cuba all the way down to Trinidad and Tobago, will experience a significant demographic decline and with an aging population. So unless there's a major infusion of migrants from abroad, for example, as we're seeing with Venezuela in some territories, these populations are going to decline and become increasingly unproductive. So the diasporic economy, as I call it, is a critical infusion in three key areas. One, it operates as a market for goods and services exported from the Caribbean. The diaspora entrepreneurs act as co-creators often. So this is where you can do direct diaspora investments, joint ventures, that kind of thing. And thirdly, the diasporic entrepreneurs often tend to be competitors as well. So, so there are three key ways in which we need to further collaborate to generate what we call return migration and transmigration as a strategy going forward. So our smallness can actually become more or be ameliorated as a problem by infusing a link to the diasporic economy. So I'll leave it at that for now.
I love it, turning a challenge into a solution. We've got time for one more reflection on that question of skilled migration, if anyone wants to come in. Okay, we're going to move on then to just asking for a final reflection before I hand it back to Maria. So I'm looking for a thought to leave colleagues on other islands with, something they could start to address this challenge or something they could change. I'm going to come around in the same order that you spoke in, just to give you a heads up. So I'm afraid that means you're up first, Stuart, for a final thought.
Absolutely fine. I'm just going to stick with the theme of my presentation, which was actually start having the more proactive approach to skills. Actually look at where you could take your island's economy and then find out what skills gaps that will create in the future.
Nice, a data-led approach. Understand what you've got already. Understand what the gaps are going forward, and then use that as your kind of keystone to where you steer to. Thank you, Jan. What would you suggest?
I'm going to build on that theme of skills, and I think helping young people understand the difference between broad transferable skills that would take them into sort of any area of employment. Employers aren't a homogeneous group, so those skills in sort of support employment in all sectors, but then actually the need for technical and vocational skills when they do get into employment. So understanding perhaps how those can be developed in induction and professional development when they do go into the workplace. And then the other little nugget really is not just seeing part-time jobs when they're over the age of 13 as a way of earning money, but seeing it as part of that skills development that they start with their first job and continue right the way through their lives.
Great, thank you, Jan. Yeah, absolutely. Every little hour in employment just builds a bit extra in terms of those skills. Neem, what would your tip be for other islands?
In my opinion, the islands, they just should be the multidiscipline. They shouldn't prepare just for one task, but they should be capable to do different kind of the job, and it depends from the season on the island. And then I think they can have the wonderful life. Thanks.
Thank you, Neem. Great. I love that. Kind of gives that flexibility, particularly as jobs change. Jeanette, what would your suggestion be?
I think it's to make sure that you've got that good link with what's happening in the island context, especially for somewhere like us where we're really small. So knowing that what you are delivering in college is relative and usable and transferable for the wider context, whether that be in Guernsey or the wider world. And as a couple of other people have said, it's important that we help students realise that every experience is a positive experience and there's learning in every situation, and it's not just a part-time job. Everything is relevant, and those wider employability skills are really important.
Fantastic. Thank you, Jeanette. Keith, back to you for a final thought.
I would say that future skills have to be global skills, and especially in a post-COVID context, there's a greater acceptability of being able to work from anywhere and to deliver to customers anywhere. And so what we are doing is training people to operate in that framework. That's why we are focused on digital transformation as one of our core planks going forward, as well as global pathways, as well as sustainable futures. You can't dissect one from the other. You have to be working on multiple platforms with multiple agendas and perspectives all at the same time. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Keith. And Orlando, final word from you.
Yeah, just to say ditto to everyone. The notion of critical employability skills, based on our labor market surveys in the Caribbean, our employers are saying, hey, once we receive somebody who is trainable, you have to be educated to be trainable. And once we have somebody who is trainable, our emphasis, especially in the hospitality industry, is all about the hospitality, the critical employability skills, the attitude, the numeracy, the literacy. And of course, because Cantor has this tremendous emphasis on the transferability of skills, not only regionally, but globally, we have to ensure that our persons have both the critical employability skills as well as their multi skills to be prepared for the skills of the future.
Fantastic. Thank you, Orlando. And some great messages kind of coming together there at the end. So thank you so much to all of our panelists. Big virtual round of applause to you all. Thank you to our audience. And I'll just hand back to Maria to close off this session and close off this first day of the conference. Maria.
Christian, I don't know, but my video isn't working, but I'll start by saying thank you all so much for joining us today in our session. Here I am. We want to say a huge thank you to the Yacht Foundation, Ollie Newton, and of course our panel of keynote speakers. For session highlights or any information on upcoming sessions, please head to our social media channels. They have been shared in the chat. And you can also head to islandinnovation.co for any information you need. For all of those who might have missed it, we announced the very exciting news during the opening session. Island Innovation is partnering with the government of Prince Edward Island to host the first ever Global Sustainable Island Summit in Canada. Expect a 2-day in-person summit in May 2024, where we will be discussing innovative solutions and advancements in sustainable energy. Follow the link. I'm pretty sure someone will put it in the chat right now. And as a final note, thank you all so much for attending. We hope to see you during our next session, which will be in 30 minutes, celebrating 5 years of the Virtual Island Summit, an interview with our CEO, James Elsmore. Thank you all so much. Have a great day, night, and I hope to see you soon. Bye, everyone.